Here's my spare John Whale board. That's test.wmv electronics. Power problems, in other words green light not coming on. A couple of things to check. One thing that we need to check is just down here. Hope you can see that. I'll try and come in a bit closer. Just there. Just get my screwdriver. That thing, I've got to be careful because I'm switched on, is a voltage regulator, which takes the voltage from 12 volts down to 5 and regulates the voltage to drive the central processor and other components, of course. So the first thing we've got to do is test to make sure we've got power coming in, and we'll do that underneath on those two pegs there. So if you can see that, that's the second and third in, third being the negative and the second one in from that end is your live, and you should get whatever your power supply is there. And as you can see, we've got 12.69. my power supply is reading 12.6 and it's driving 0.2 of a milliamp. So no problems at that stage. The next thing we have to check is this diode here. Remember, if this is not working, that light won't be on. We need to check this diode here and make sure that is working. And the way that we do that is we put our meter onto diode symbol. On mine it's diode and continuity. Right, so we'll switch our power off now. We've done that test, and we need to check that diode. Put meter on one end and meter on the other end. As you can see from the meter, that's reading normally. You swap it over, and that's the kind of readings you get the other way. Just this meter's not particularly good. But that's what you should get, and that's the black connection of my meter on that end and my red one on that end. Right, the next thing is we need to test is to make sure that this voltage regulator here is working correctly. Now, as we can see, there's three legs. The centre one underneath, so we're going to go underneath again, is there. So this big earth here goes to the centre leg. Make sure the power's off while you're doing this at this stage. There. So that's the input, so that's the 12 volts in. That's the ground, earth. And that's your positive 5 volts regulated output. So in order to test that, you need to put your meter on the closest range to a testing. I'm going to use 20 volts because that will do 5 volts and our 12 volts. Because we need to make sure the 12 volts get into the regulator as well. Right, now you've identified which they are. Be very careful this, because if you slip, short them out, you will blow it. No if, buts or whats. Now the other thing to remember is as well, static electricity on the board from your hands. Be very careful with that. I am actually used to playing with these things. I've done so many of them over the years. But what you can do is get yourself a piece of board, like so, put over. Now you can't see my meter. I'm not going to put a bit of board over before you test, basically, just as a precaution. I'm used to doing this, so I'm going to switch my power back on. So we're going to touch the negative, centre, which you can actually do from somewhere else, but I'm doing it from here. And we can see, now we've gone through the diode, our power supply voltage is down a little bit. Quite normal. It's because it's going through the diode. Now we need to touch the output, which is that third leg along, and we can see that is 4.98, which is almost 5 volt. That meter could be slightly inaccurate, it's just an old one I've got in the shed. So that's the first thing that we need to establish, that the 5 volt regulator is working. And obviously that is switch the power back off. Now the downside to this, if that regulator's gone out, there's a fair bet that your pre-programmed IC is blown, which is the heart of the board. That will have to be ordered from J Omega Electronics, John Whale, directly. Anything from there inwards gets quite complicated to check, but you can build a circuit for testing these. Just whip them out. This is just one of my test rigs that I use, because I do repair quite a few of them actually. Anyway, you may actually get away with just changing that voltage regulator. It's worth a go. It's a little 5 volt regulator. The only problem I'm going to say to you is it's soldered double-sided. In other words, it's soldered on the track on that side and that side. The way to do that is to warm it up with a soldering iron and use this stuff, desoldering braid, and it sucks the solder up off the board like so. I do use a rework station myself, which has got a continual vacuum, a little bit like one of these things. Put it on. Mine's got a continuous vacuum on it, but that's down at my works, not here. Right, hope that helps. There ain't a lot more without going into circuitry that I can show you as a quick test, but I hope that helps. It'll give you some idea to whether it's the voltage regulator or not, which I suspect on most of these boards that go down when they've been wired back to front that I've had in, that's all it's been. I've only ever had one where that's gone. In other words, the processor itself. I've only had one board in mine, but I have had quite a lot with that voltage regulator gone. But usually you can tell, usually gone all blown in them, but not always. There's usually occasionally there's no damage on them whatsoever. I have got a little jig, I can't find it at the moment, where I just unplug those out, stick them in a jig, and it lights some LEDs up like this, just to say it works. Just a quick way of testing again. It's a Darlington array, so there's no way of really testing that other than to actually use the IC.